Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining today's free live webinar on the top cybersecurity insights for 2021, organized by SIT Academy. It's a pleasure to see so many people joining us even before Christmas. I'm sure, and end of the year, that everybody is busy, but I can promise it's going to be worthwhile to attend these 45 minutes with us. When I'm speaking of the two of us, please let me introduce myself quickly. My name is Philipp Foxberger. I'm the Managing Director of SIT Academy and in charge of all our executive education and further education programs at the Schaffhausen Institute of Technology, a brand new research institute with university programs offered out of Switzerland, focusing on computer science, software engineering, physics, talking about quantum technologies, advanced materials, and business sciences. But today, our focus is going to be on cybersecurity, and I'm very happy to have just next to me Candid Wüst, which is SIT Academy faculty, as well as VP of Cyber Protection Research at Acronis, a real expert on the topic. And he's going to make the next few slides, giving you the first idea of what's going on. But before we start, let me please remind you of a few housekeeping rules. This webinar is going to be recorded and shared with you thereafter. There's also a Q&A function enabled. So please feel free to ask us questions. We're going to answer these ones as during our webinar. And please also use the comment functions we have on Facebook and YouTube if you prefer one of these two channels. So with that, I'm very happy to hand over now to Candid, who is going to talk about the cyber threats which are coming next year to us.
Thank you, Philip, and also welcome from my side. So it's my pleasure to talk about all the cyber threats that we see. And yeah, unfortunately, in my 20 years of experience battling with those threats, we see that there seems to be no ending. There's always something new coming up. And of course, in 2020, we have seen a lot of COVID-19 themed threats around. So cyber protection is more important than ever. And if we talk about it, I mean, just go into the media, take any newspaper or online information source, you will see on a daily basis new articles coming up. You might remember the big spear phishing attack against Twitter, which resulted in high-profile accounts being hijacked by attackers. So they managed to convince insiders to actually switch some of the accounts over, and then they were allowed to post for Obama, Bill Gates, and others and spread some Bitcoin scams. Of course, we also see that collaboration tools like video conferencing systems, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, they all have been kind of mission critical at the moment, right? Many companies are relying day-to-day business onto them, but that also means that the attackers are focusing more on their research onto those platforms. So we have seen attacks against Zoom, which allow them to steal your credentials, your passwords. Just recently, as in last month, there have been a few vulnerabilities in the Microsoft Teams, which even without user interaction allows someone to take over a machine if they're in the same Microsoft Teams meeting. And we probably will see more of those coming in the future as well, as unfortunately, I guess, working from home will be there for a while. Well, probably we're gonna move into working from anywhere. So kind of a hybrid model, that's what we expect. And that means that the attackers will use those exposed servers even more to attack and get their profits. Of course, we also see that, well, there are vulnerabilities that can be patched. Microsoft releases, well, nearly around 100 patches for their own software every month. This month in December, it was a little bit less with 58, but still, we're getting a lot of things that you can patch, but many companies do not because they don't have a schedule. They don't even know that all of their machines should be patched. So making sure that you know what's happening in your systems, that you have the visibility of which machine needs to be patched is important here as well. And of course, yes, ransomware. It's probably one of the biggest menace at the moment. Targeted ransomware attacks where they go and encrypt your data, but it's actually not just encrypting. Nowadays in 2020, they will steal your data as well. So they exfiltrate sensitive information and then they blackmail you to, well, either get the decryption key for the encrypted data, but also if you don't pay, they will publish the information. And as we have seen with Software AG, which has been compromised as well by ransomware, they were demanding 20 million US dollars in a ransom, which they did not pay. And therefore the attackers started to release some of the information to the internet. So there's a lot of money to be made, unfortunately. Some of those attack groups do make millions every month. And that means there's no need for them to stop, because why would they if they're still profitable, right? Let's have a look at kind of where we see the most attacks happening at the moment. So of course, email is still the attack vector number one. It's very simple, very fast for the attackers to use, and unfortunately also very successful. In about 3 out of 4 cases where a vulnerability is used, we see that it's through Office documents. But in most cases, actually, there is no vulnerability being misused. They're just trying to social engineer the user, meaning they will send an Office document like a Word, like Excel, and then there's a malicious macro in it, and they convince the user to open it because it's an important invoice or because it's a parcel delivery notice. And people, unfortunately, will click on activate the content, and that means the malicious macro will start in the background to run and go further. So very prominent at the moment. And of course, yes, we see that's happening everywhere at the moment. If you look at the countries, yes, of course, the US is high in numbers of frequency of attacks that we see, but also in Europe, for example, in Germany, we see around 19% of the attacks happening at the moment, if we just look at malware. If you go over to ransomware, interestingly enough, we saw quite a spike at the beginning of the lockdown period in March. And now since August, the levels are kind of elevated again. So the attackers, they don't shy down on attacking people, even hospitals, which are in dire need at the moment. But of course, that also means there's a high chance that they will have to pay the ransom because they cannot afford to be down for multiple days. But let's move over to the prediction. I think that's probably the most important and interesting one that we hear today, right? So, of course, we will see what we have already seen. So the known attacks like phishing, like those malicious emails, they will continue, but they will kind of be automated because the attackers, they're using scripts to automate, and they have started to use artificial intelligence as well. So they try to make it as easy as possible for them to actually go into it, make enough, let's say, victims pay or do some stealing of credit cards, passwords, just something which is of interest and profit to them. On the other hand, ransomware, targeted ransomware, as I mentioned, will definitely stay for next year. We expect this kind of double extortion to even grow. So where information is stolen, and if you don't pay the ransom, this will be published. So far, we have already seen over 1,000 companies having had their information stolen and then published to the internet. It used to be the Mace ransomware group. Now Egregor and Conti are probably the top ones at the moment. But there are over 50 different groups very active in high-profile attacks, and many more which go over SMBs and smaller, even consumer as well. So don't make the mistake and think, well, there's nothing to be gained, so why would an attacker go after me? There is always something of interest to the attacker, even if it's just to use you as a bait to attack others by misusing your trusted relationship. And of course, we also saw a lot of companies moving to the cloud, right? They had to because they wanted to be agile. They had to be kind of quick in adapting to the new environment, and cloud definitely helps with that. But unfortunately, many lack the knowledge or didn't have the resources to get external experts. Well, they're scarce as well. But that means now we have a lot of cloud data buckets which are unprotected or misconfigured. We have seen databases like Elastic Database, which are open to everyone. And those, of course, lead to data breaches as well. So millions of data records can be accessed. There have been 7.4 billion with a B data records being opened in an Elasticsearch database by Le Figaro, the French newspaper, at the beginning of the year. And we've seen other examples like that happening. So unfortunately, people need to kind of go back, revisit what they have done, and make sure that they have a secure kind of environment. And I already mentioned the supply chain. There's many trusted levels now. You trust your provider, your service provider. Maybe you trust a few marketing applications to run on your website as well. You have some suppliers sending you physical goods or interacting with your with your digital data. And all those links can, of course, be attacked and will be attacked by the cyber criminals in the future. So we expect this to grow further as well. Another point to highlight on the working from home, well, of course, your laptop might now be more exposed because your Wi-Fi at home might have a weak password. The router might have not been updated in 3 years, so there might already be malware running it, redirecting every DNS request somewhere else. And just think about it, now you're at home, so you don't have that perimeter of your corporate network anymore because perimeters are gone. So maybe some of your children, which are using another laptop for online gaming, have a compromised device, but now it's in the same network. So it's a lot easier for the attackers to hop onto your machine and then through the VPN into the corporate network as well, or into the cloud. So that probably will be going on for the future as well. We have seen a lot of attacks over vulnerabilities in RDP servers, in VPN, Citrix, F5, all those kind of endpoints on the other end for the exposed servers are, of course, in the crosshair of the attackers. And even if they're all patched, and as we said, that should be done, well, there might be a weak password, right? Are you sure that all your users have a strong password, maybe even multi-factor authentication on their RDP, the remote desktop protocol service? I highly doubt. There's always at least 2 or 3 which have a weak password, maybe summer 2020 or COVID-19, which are definitely not good passwords to choose, but it happens. And the attackers, they know it, right? They know exactly what they're up to. They know your environment. They might do some research on social media sites, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. They find out what software are you using? What are they up against? And once they have one foot in the door, they will look around. They might try to disable security software, uninstall antivirus, delete the backups. And that, of course, makes it a lot easier for them to then roll out the ransomware and take over your complete network or your home machines once and for all. And well, even if you have all of this covered already, don't forget about business process logics. I mean, it's not all about the software, right? We have the human aspect as well that we have to cover. And sometimes it's about thinking how the process works. We have seen an attack where cyber criminals managed to get into the template of the invoice system of a company. And what did they do? Well, they changed the account number of the receiving end on the invoice so that at the end of the month where the company sends out all the invoices to their clients, well, the invoice was real. It was sent from the real system, but the money went to the attacker's account. It took them more than 3 weeks to actually figure it out because, of course, the people did not notice it either. So things like that can happen because people are misusing legitimate access once they have an account compromised, hijacked, or might even be a malicious insider, right, who wants to get some extra profits for Christmas. You don't really know. And speaking of Christmas, I guess IoT devices are still high on the price list, or well, on the gift list probably. So having all those devices at home, but also in corporations. Many people are shopping for cameras, for sound systems, or any other smart device that they could put somewhere in the office or at home. And then many of those can be attacked. We've seen vacuum cleaning robots which have been attacked successfully to be hijacked and then being used as a kind of a microphone to listen into people. We have seen many of those devices as a stepping stone to then attack other kind of devices in your environment, and that could be the server or the laptop. Speaking of it, last Christmas, I even attacked my own light bulbs at home, the smart light bulbs, just to prove the point that it is possible. And do you really expect your light bulb to be protected? Do you install an antivirus on it? Probably not, because it's not going to help. So you need an overall integrated security, which can actually cover all of those different domains. And maybe just as a last point, we should mention that Yes, of course, there are nation-state sponsored attackers still out there as well. And we see many companies, well, many corporations working together with the nations and governments to actually build their own defensive capabilities, but unfortunately also offensive capabilities, because that's where the information is. So make no mistakes about it. Advanced persistent threats, targeted threats, they will continue, but we see the line blurred. So a lot of those nation-state actors, they use the same tools as we see with cyber criminals, or maybe it's vice versa. The cyber criminals are using the same as nation-state actors. So it could be PowerShell scripts, it could be Cobalt Strike penetration test frameworks, all those classical things. And whenever someone comes up with a new vulnerability, well, it takes maybe a few days for the other groups to copy it and then replay it with other targets. So there's definitely not a shortage of new things to cover, but unfortunately, we have to deal with it. The good news is, well, it's kind of common knowledge, hopefully, or best practices that do exist that you can protect against those. So in very many cases, it's more that the companies do not really know that they should it, or they have it somewhere on the priority list where, yes, we will address it next year, but we still have to figure out how we can submit the laptop to every employee, right? We are aware that there are probably bigger things to matter at the moment where you have to make sure that your business stays online and productive. But don't forget that disaster recovery plans, making sure that you can detect and see all those attacks happening is important as well. But I guess with that, I'll give it back to Philip, because that was a short overview of what we expect to happen in 2021.
Okay, thanks, Candid, for sharing. Obviously, I have to change my password from COVID-19 to Sputnik 5. Is that okay, or still too weak? Okay. No, but thanks a lot for sharing. We have here on this slide 9 predictions. Now, I think if you are a company and you maybe have some scarce resources, what would be your recommendation? Where should company focusing most for next year if they cannot cover and yeah, make sure that nothing is going to happen on all these 9 threats? So which are the top ones you would consider as most relevant for companies next year?
Well, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. Otherwise, it would be easy to get that. But I would say focus on ransomware, making sure that you have a protection in for ransomware. And that means backing up your data, but also protecting the data. Because as I mentioned, a lot of the cyber criminals, they will delete your backups. So make sure that you can actually restore them, that they are immutable, that no one else can delete them. And probably also should check that no one can steal your data. So that's one point. And the other one, you actually mentioned it, passwords. Strong authentication using multi-factor authentication. So those smartphone applications where you can have a one-time password being sent for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. They're not foolproof. You can get around those. Specifically, of course, if you have a phishing website, which will use them in real time in the background. But they make it a lot harder for the attackers, because usually they try to do something like credential stuffing, which is an attack where once they have one password because it got leaked due to a hack on Facebook or somewhere else, they will try the same password on your corporate email, on your PayPal account, on, I don't know, your Zoom account. And yeah, there is a good chance that people will use the same password. So that means they will get in, because breaching one password leads to hundreds of other accounts. So don't make it too easy for them. Have different passwords for different services and use multi-factor authentication, because then they will not be able to just hop from one account to the other. So I think those would be the 2. Number 3 would probably be patching the known vulnerabilities. So if Microsoft releases some patches, you should definitely put them in. And I mean, yes, it sounds trivial and we probably all know that we should, but just remembering WannaCry, the big ransomware outbreak in 2017. There has been a patch available for already 2 months before this WannaCry ransomware was starting, and we still saw hundreds of thousands of unpatched machines because people were not putting on the priorities. So those would be my 3 topics.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, I have to say I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I'm surprised. I mean, ransomware, you mentioned it now twice already, and it's nothing new, no? It has been there for quite some time already. So why is it still such a powerful threat when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yeah, ransomware actually is quite old. We've seen in the 90s already. At the time, it didn't really work because you had to send a check to Panama to get the decryption key. So there was no cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, and not that many people were connected to the internet. So then it started, and of course, it got more and more popular. So we've seen that it worked. But at the beginning, yes, it was more about encrypting the data. And people learned that, yes, if I have a backup, either offline or somewhere protected, then it doesn't matter too much if they are able to encrypt my data. I can just restore, right? Because you should have a disaster recovery anyway, because people might accidentally delete information, or there might be a hard drive crash. It still happens that hardware fails. So people got adapted to it. But that means the attackers adapted again as well. So that's why I saw at the end of 2019, groups like Maze starting to massively exfiltrate terabytes of data, which of course means that's another avenue to kind of put on a lever that, yes, you have to pay, otherwise the information gets leaked. And the last point to make is exactly the deletion of the backups. So giving you one example of a small company or mid-sized company in Germany, there the attackers managed to get into a account of a administrator. And unfortunately, they used the same password on the console for their backup solution. So the attacker actually went in, deleted all the backups from there, and he made it even worse. He actually used the backup solution to then create a small backup of the malware, the ransomware, and then restored that malware to all the different points. So not only did he delete the backup, he also used the living of the land, using their own tools against them. And guess what? Yeah, they actually were down for nearly a week because they didn't have any offline copies. They didn't want to pay, which is good, but then you have to pay the price. So ransomware still matters today in 2020 and will still matter in 2021, where they probably go after IoT devices, OT, and even the cloud. So they will expand everywhere where there's data to be encrypted or to be stolen.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I just would take the opportunity again to invite the participants to actually ask their own questions as well. As I said at the beginning, the Q&A function is enabled here on Zoom, but you can also use Facebook or YouTube for some comments, which will get forwarded to us so we can answer that. In the meantime, Candid, I have another question. Cloud becomes more important than ever. I mean, we are all working from home, you mentioned it, but also online shopping is becoming more and more relevant. So I don't think for companies, it's not an option not to go to the cloud. But what should they consider if they do so? You mentioned in your presentation a few highlights already on key facts, but can you please elaborate a little bit more on that topic?
Sure, my pleasure. And yes, I'm a fan of the cloud. So don't get me wrong. It's not that you should not go to the cloud. Specifically now, it allows you to be flexible and quick in adapting, right? And yes, online shops, a lot of people had to create the online shop for the first time, I guess, to stay online, stay productive, and actually sell something. But we are aware that, of course, many companies lack the knowledge, the expertise of how to secure kind of cloud services. Microsoft Azure, Amazon, or even Google, they all provide a lot of good tools to help you actually create secure online facilities, but you have to use them. So just as an example, I run a small, well, let's call it honeypot. So 100 buckets on Amazon AWS S3, which are basically data storage in the cloud. And I deliberately misconfigured them that everyone can access my data. Just read access, but that's good enough. And I see every day at least 6 different people trying to access my data. Well, actually not just trying, they download my data and I put in a few fake documents with passwords. They even read the passwords and then try them on other systems. So people are actually using it because it works. So my recommendation would be make sure that the configuration of your cloud environment is secure. If you don't have the expertise, talk to some consultant, talk to your MSP if you're a small, mid-sized company. There are other people around that can help you. It doesn't cost the world, but it will save you in the long run, because either you would face some ransom from a cyber criminal, or you might find you against some fine from GDPR or other privacy policies because private information has been leaked. The second point is make sure you have the visibility, as in getting the log files from those cloud environments integrated in your security posture. If you're running a CM, a SOC, or any internal application where you gather all the log files, you should absolutely integrate those log files as well. Because otherwise you're blind. If you don't know who's accessing your data, what's happening with the data, you don't really know how to respond, right? You don't even know that someone has downloaded all this information. So make sure that you have those visibilities, which would help you, because yes, we have seen that people are hijacking, for example, Kubernetes, those container softwares, where they started just to create their own containers with malware, like cryptocurrency miners in the background, which will, using a lot of CPU, start to mine for Monero coins and other things, and then roll it out on companies' own container software distribution systems, which means, yeah, they're not stealing your data, but they will actually create a high bill of your cloud provider because they're using your resources. So that's something you can see if you have the visibility, and it's actually not too difficult to do, but unfortunately, yes, you have to make it. So I think configuration and visibility would be the key.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have a first question from the audience. Eric actually asked a question coming back to ransomware. If you, in case you have actually an antivirus software, can it still be bypassed by ransomware or even malware?
Yeah, of course, it's the old cat and mouse game, right? Attackers always try to kind of bypass security solutions by finding new, interesting ways. So giving you one example, we have seen this year that some groups, like Wasted Locker, started to download a virtual box, like a virtual machine, with the old Windows XP system onto the victim's machine, and then they mapped all the drives from the real host machine into the virtual machine. So mapping the C drive, the D drive, all your hard drives inside the virtual machine with read and write access. And then from within the virtual machine, they started to encrypt it, which means for the host, it looked like, well, that's just a legitimate virtual box environment. So why should I stop it, right? So a lot of security solutions actually did not block it, which is why it is critical that you have solutions that can actually distinguish that behavior and still go kind of data-centric. So for example, the Acronis Cyber Protect has a threat agnostic data protection, which means we just look how are the processes interacting with the files on disk. And since we have many, many years of experience with low-level disk input-output, how files are written from the backup side, we actually know what's good behavior and what's bad behavior. And if someone tries to encrypt, let's say 5 files in 10 seconds, well, either they're encrypting the whole disk with BitLocker or some legitimate applications, or it is ransomware. So we can make the decision with artificial intelligence, block it, and even should there be some files which have been encrypted, and yes, it could happen, we can restore it from the local cache that we have protected so that the user will not lose any data. But in the end, yes, it is a cat and mouse game, and we have seen, unfortunately, some classical traditional antivirus solutions being bypassed. So that's why you need a sophisticated data protection or cyber protection solution.
Okay, so Eric, I hope we have been able to answer your question here. There's another very interesting question coming up here, and candidate, according to the question, if you would be in charge of a small, mid-sized company, and you have to be in charge of setting up cyber protection for this company, how would you start? What kind of setup would you choose? And maybe you can share even a best practice with us. Seems to be an issue which 2 actually of our participants have asked in the same direction some questions here.
Yes, I mean, I guess we all want to know how to protect it, right? Because I'm talking about all those threats and I don't want to leave you with nightmares, definitely not before Christmas. So yes, what would I do? Well, there are some best practices around. For example, there's the NIST, cybersecurity framework, which provides you with some best practices. And there's even one specifically for mid-sized companies. And there's some for specific sectors like finance or energy market as well. So you can use those, and then you start kind of small and grow from there. Don't try to kind of make a project and be 100% secure by end of this year. This is going to fail. As we all know, big, huge projects tend to fail because there's too much moving parts and you're never going to be 100% secure anyway. So start small, make sure that you have management buy-in, so they should be on board to actually push it forward, and define some of the steps which are crucial for you where you think you're failing the most. And that's where the frameworks can help you. You can also have a look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is an open, free available source talking about the techniques, kind of the atom operations of all those attackers. And you can take one of the recent attacks, maybe the ransomware attack against Foxconn, where they asked for $34 million in ransom. If you decide you don't want that to happen to you, you just follow through the path and see, would I be able to detect this? Would that be able to succeed in my environment? And that could lead to making sure you have an environment where you know all your devices, so inventory. Make sure that you can patch those in a timely fashion, so being quick in patching, having secure user authentication, and a good backup and disaster recovery strategy. So those 4 points would be something I would start with and then grow it from there. It doesn't make sense to protect yourself against North Korean APTs at the moment if you cannot even fend off the script kiddie from a neighborhood, right? So make sure that you grow on a solid fundament and then build it up from there. Put in some targets. I don't say get lazy and sloppy. There is a lot of things that you can and should do, but start with those 4 points and take it from there.
Okay, this sounds, however, from my experience or when I listen to you, very technical, what you just told us. Are there also some more managerial implications you would consider as relevant if you do a setup for cyber protection for a company?
Yeah, I mean, I have been talking about technical controls because I'm a techie at heart. I cannot hide it. But yes, of course, there are administrative controls as well. I mean, there is always the human factor, right? So we should not forget about awareness training, making sure that your users are aware of phishing emails and not just aware that, well, yes, there might be some fake delivery message from DHL or FedEx coming in and they say, oh yeah, I can spot it. I didn't order anything. I delete it. But actually that they will tell your IT department about it so they can warn others. Because there's always one who, yeah, well, clicks on the link, opens the document because they actually ordered something or they're just under stress and didn't read it carefully. So make sure that you can use the human firewall to your advantage. And of course, also, let's say on the management side, well, I already mentioned management has to be involved with security. Security is a board topic for sure. It has to be top-down communicated because if you see your CEO or COO not really following through with the practice, a lot of your employees might think, well, why should I care, right, if they don't really do it either? And on the other hand, they can influence kind of the priorities, which might shift, like we've seen with COVID-19, but they need to be addressed. And on the other hand, they can also help building a security culture inside the environment. And we all know, in the end, it's a team effort, right? Everyone has to work together. So hiring the right people, bringing the right people inside to the companies, and also taking the appropriate measures to actually put in the right people into task force. Because sometimes, well, there might be an incident and you might need to pull the plug on your website. Who can decide that? Can the CISO actually just say, oh, I'm shutting down the whole production line because we have a ransomware attack and need to remove it? They probably should, but they need to have that decided beforehand, because otherwise, during a crisis, you don't want to wake up your CFO or CEO at 3 o'clock in the morning and discuss, hey, I'm going to shutting down the business, right? At least I wouldn't want to do it. and probably most others won't. So I think it is vital to have the kind of soft controls or administrative controls as well. And of course, yes, awareness and kind of learning and training is important. And I think it's a good point that you are listening to this webcast here. So that's the right step. It shows that you are interested in going further. And I think, yeah, that's definitely something for your to-do list for next year as well.
Thank you very much. And I take this notion, it's already on the table now, that it's not only important that you're here now with us for this webinar, but that's also the purpose why SIT Academy actually decided to create this online course on cybersecurity, because we honestly believe, besides the technical part, it's absolutely crucial that not only the top management, but going down the hierarchies, employees will get a proper training, awareness training on the topics around cybersecurity. And that was the intention when we created actually this cybersecurity class. And we have been able to really work with two of the best people in our network. You just have been listening to Candid, who was one of our main faculty. And the second person we have included to create this content was Rainer. He's also visiting faculty at SIT Academy, and he was the former cyber information security officer at UBS Group, so worldwide responsible for one of the top financial institutes for protecting their data. Obviously, two experts, and beside these two people, we also have invited in this course many other experts, which have only a shorter input session or only a few slides they share with the audience. But overall, we have been able to really work with a group of experts around the world to create this course. Now, from the structure, the idea was that obviously what everybody needs and get a solid foundation and understanding of what's happening out there in the world. And first of all, we cover a few cyber principles for sure, but then the cyber threats, more or less what we have heard today in a nutshell, is much more elaborated there in this part of the program. And then we have actually looked into the part of the prevention. And again, as we have now shared in the discussion, there are two elements when it comes to the prevention. One is the technical part, and one is the more the managerial part. And exactly that's also the structure which we have chosen for this course element here. And then last but not least, things can happen, things go wrong from time to time. So it's important that we also cover the recovery part. And again, in the recovery part, we talk about the technical aspects of forensics, etc., but also the more managerial part when it comes to the communication, but also how you can insure your company, for example, from cyber risk by having the right insurance policy, by having the right measures to recover then the data, etc. So this is the rough structure of the course we have been able to create. And this is how the whole course is structured. We use one of the most famous and well-known educational platforms in the world, edX. So it's the same logic behind. It's a self-paced learning course. So you just log in, you go through all these sessions. We have, after each session, we have an interactive quiz just to check if people have understood what has been covered in the previous video. We have further background, further information and background information on research on NES framework, just Candid mentioned, and many more things are all on this platform. And it's around 15 hours of content, which you can go through. And it's a very moderate and fair price. We offer this course, and it can be found on our website, sit.org/academy, and you will find or get access to this course here. So I can only recommend, if you like what you have heard today in this webinar, to actually have a sneak view into this course and sign up for it, go through it, and share it also with your friends and your colleagues at work, because we honestly believe that this is an element to create a cyber hygiene in the world, which is desperately needed giving all these threats that we have now seen for next year, given our new work life we have, home office, the cloud, the online shopping, etc. So I think it's really relevant for all of us. And that was also the reason why we believe and we strongly emphasize and advocate for this course, because I think the understanding and managing of this emerging information technology and cyber security is indeed a critical skill for executives in all type of industries. So independent where you are working, in which sector, I think this is an overall issue which is relevant. In the meantime, we have received a few more questions from the audience, which I would like to take advantage to hand them over to Candid so he can give you an answer here. And the first one we see here is actually a question which I think is very interesting. How will the FireEye breach change the threat landscape?
Yes, I mean, for those who are not aware, the security company FireEye got breached by some unknown attackers at the moment, and they of course stole probably some information around customers, but also some of their own tools, because the company also does penetration tests. And I think I want to say it shows that it can happen to everyone, right? There are very sophisticated attackers out there. We don't really know what exactly happened, but now we know that those tools which they have developed for their own attack simulations, as in penetration tests, are now out there. And I'd say it would probably mean that, well, they have to develop new tools for sure. Other cyber criminals might adapt and use those tools because they are now visible on the internet. You can find on websites like VirusTotal, there's lists of kind of when they have been used in the past. So this will shift a little bit to new tools. But having said that, many of the attack vectors and techniques being used, they have already been known. You can see them in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It's just a specific tool, but from that perspective, it won't change too much on the side of what you need to defend against, but it should change your mindset and show that, yes, there are very sophisticated attackers out there, but also that it is important to have the visibility, because that's what helped them to identify that there was a breach and that someone was inside the organization. So as always, you should assume breach, assume that someone actually managed to get in, because maybe it's just, well, a USB stick that you found in the garage and put it in, right? It's not always the email where you can blame the employee for clicking on it. Sometimes it's a bit more elaborate, or could be even a physical attack nearby, hacking into the Wi-Fi because the password was not secure. So there are many ways in. I don't think it will change too much. As I said, maybe as a last word, you shouldn't really care about who's inside your network, right? You should have no one inside the network except you and your customers. So make sure that you can protect and you can detect if anything happens.
Okay, with this word, we are already coming to the end. Time is running, and it was a pleasure actually having all these questions coming in from the participant side as well, and having them answered by Candid here. And I don't want to stretch and go beyond the 45 minutes we have planned and scheduled this webinar for. So I would like to take the opportunity to actually thank everyone who has participated here in today's live webinar. I just would like to mention an additional event we are hosting next week on quantum computing. Very interesting, very relevant topic as well. Maybe a little bit more in the long term, not necessarily for next year, but never start thinking about the future, never hold back on that. Just go in and learn about these very interesting topics here. And in general, if you are interested on SIT, on SIT Academy, what we're doing, check our website, register for our newsletter, check out our events. There's plenty of things going on also next year. With this, I would like to thank everyone again for joining today, taking time to be with us here for this 45 minutes. And I wish you a very festive season and Happy New Year. And I'm looking forward to welcome you, one or the other, for another webinar next year. Thanks a lot and goodbye.